Picture this scenario. You're planning a raid trip with 3 friends. The playlist is ready. The snacks are
Oh,
bought.
the essentials, right?
Right, the
Yeah.
essentials. And everyone is just super hyped about this beach house you rented. You're throwing bags in the trunk, laughing, ready to hit the gas. But there's this one person in the group who just isn't laughing. They're standing by the rear left tire, frowning.
I know this person.
Yeah.
They're the one asking, did we actually check the spare? And did anyone look at the weather report for the mountain pass? Because I saw a 40% chance of hail.
Exactly. And let's be honest, in that moment, the rest of the group is probably thinking, oh my God, stop being such a buzzkill. Let's just go.
Yeah, totally.
But here's the twist. 3 hours later, when you're on that mountain pass and the hail actually starts, you don't slide off the road. And why? Because that person made you buy new wiper blades yesterday.
And the tragic part, nobody says thank you. I mean, they just enjoy the fact that they're still alive.
That is the absolute perfect introduction to the personality profile we're unpacking in today's deep dive. We are looking at the WSWU from the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report. They call this type the quiet risk keeper.
It sounds like a character class in a fantasy game, doesn't it? The Rift Keeper.
It really does.
But it's a very real, very specific psychological profile. And frankly, it's the one profile that keeps modern civilization from just collapsing under its own weight.
High stakes right out at the gate. I love it. So our mission today for you, our listener, is to decode the mind of this, what the report calls a silent stability personality. We want to understand the person who doesn't want to be the hero putting out the fire, because they want to be the person who prevents the fire from ever starting in the first place.
Which is a really tough gig because, nobody gives out medals for accidents that didn't happen.
So true. Now, before we get into the actual wiring of their brain, let's zoom out for a second. We're pulling this from the Max Energy ME80 system. For anyone joining us who might have missed our previous dives into this framework, give us the quick elevator pitch. What makes this system different from, say, your standard personality test?
Sure. So most tests just tell you if you're, loud or quiet, organized or messy. They give you a label. The ME80 system is more like looking at the circuit board of a computer. It breaks personality down into energy flows.
Right, the inputs and outputs.
Exactly. Inputs, processing layers, outputs. It doesn't just tell you what someone does. It explains the actual mechanics of why they do it. It's a granular look at human operating systems, basically.
And the WSWU operating system is apparently built for one primary thing, which is stability. Let's look at their identity profile. The report has this core declaration that really stood out to me. It says, quietly strengthens the system around worst-case scenarios, absorbing risk behind the scenes.
That phrase right there, behind the scenes, is critical. The WSWU is defined as a silent stability personality. They aren't standing on a table shouting about safety regulations. They're quiet.
But silence doesn't mean they aren't working.
Oh, far from it. Their mind is constantly running what the report calls front-end protection. Think about the difference between a firefighter and a fire marshal.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. A firefighter is a hero. They kick down the door, they save the cat, everyone cheers. That is absolutely not the WSWU.
The WSWU is the fire marshal who inspected the building 6 months ago, made sure the wiring was up to code so the fire just never started.
Exactly. They have zero interest in dramatic heroics. In fact, if they have to be a hero and put out a fire, they feel like they've fundamentally failed. Their goal is pre-problem solving. They operate on a concept called worst path extrapolation.
Worst path extrapolation. I mean, that sounds terrifying. It sounds like living in a constant state of impending doom.
To you or me, yeah, it might feel like anxiety. But for the quiet risk keeper, it's just data processing. They look at a plan, say a business launch or a vacation itinerary, and they systematically deconstruct it. They ask, what is the worst possible path this could take? And then they build a wall across that path.
So while I'm visualizing the success of the launch party, they are visualizing the server crashing, the caterer getting food poisoning, and the CEO tripping on the stage.
Precisely. And they aren't doing it to be negative. That's a huge misconception. They're doing it so they can put protocols in place to ensure none of those things happen.
Let's talk about their control mechanism, their overarching philosophy. The report uses a phrase that I absolutely love, but I'm definitely going to need you to unpack for us. Causal logic closure.
Yeah, it sounds dense.
It does.
But it's actually quite beautiful when you understand it. It's about the domino effect.
Yeah.
For a WSWU, you can't just pat them on the back and tell them, don't worry, it'll be fine. That phrase drives them insane.
Because it'll be fine isn't a fact. It's just a hope.
Right. Safety comes from logic, specifically causal logic. Right. If A causes B and B is a disaster, they need to close the loop on A. They need to fix the root cause. Causal logic closure means they do not rest until the equation balances.
So they handle the chaos of the world by compressing uncertainty.
That's the method. The world is chaotic and random. The WSWU fights that chaos by squeezing the unknown down to the absolute minimum. They use rules, details, and what the report calls layered reinforcement to build a floor that just won't break.
And they do all this quietly.
Yes. The vibe of all this work is calm. They aren't frantic about it. They are methodically reinforcing the floor everyone else is dancing on.
Wow. Okay, now we need to get under the hood. The energy matrix. This is where the ME80 system really shines, breaking down their energy flow into 3 core characteristics.
Yes. The first is inward carrying. Imagine a vault or a sponge. Their main energy direction is inward. They take things in data, risk, other people's stress, and they hold it. They don't project it outward, they contain it.
Okay, so they're a container. What's the second characteristic?
High judgment stability. They are not flighty at all. They don't change their mind just because the mood in the room changed. They are grounded like a rock. And the third is restrained action.
Restrained action. You know, I feel like this is where they get misunderstood the most, because to an outsider, restrained action looks an awful lot like doing nothing.
It really does. It looks like hesitation.
Yeah.
But it's actually potential energy. They don't act impulsively. They wait until the calculation is completely finished. Think of an archer holding the bowstring back. They aren't doing nothing. They're holding tension until the aim is perfect.
Let's break down the specific layers of this matrix because this is fascinating. Start with the IQ layer, the inner value layer. The report calls this risk perception activation.
This is their radar. You know how some people have a radar for fun? Or a radar for making a profit? The WSWU has a radar specifically tuned to risk. This is what turns them on, not in a romantic way, but in a systems online kind of way.
So if everything is going smoothly and safely, are they just bored?
They might actually disengage or just coast. But the second there is a crack in the system, or a variable that doesn't quite add up, their IP layer lights up. It's a risk perception trigger. They essentially scan the horizon for storm clouds 24/7.
Okay, so the radar pings a risk. Now we move to the IQ layer, which is the emotional activation layer. The definition here is experience and verification judgment. Now, I have to stop you because usually IQ means intelligence. But in the ME80 system, this seems to mean something else entirely.
You're right to flag that. In this system, IQ refers to their standard for truth. It's how they verify reality. For the WSWU, this layer is like a lawyer in a courtroom. It demands evidence.
So they don't trust gut instinct.
Not initially, no. They trust verification. They're empiricists. If you come to them with a shiny new idea, their IQ layer asks, where is the data? Has this worked before? Show me the case study from 3 years ago. They rely on experience judgment. They have to validate the new against the old.
I can see how that would be super annoying in a brainstorming session, but invaluable when you're actually trying to build something that works in the real world.
Exactly. They are the anchor. Now, here is where it gets really interesting. The EQ layer, the decision calculation layer. You'd think for such a logical person this would be pure math. But the report defines it as emotional perception and resonance.
Wait, so their decision-making is emotional?
In a very specific way. It's about resonance. They feel the structure of a system. When a plan is risky or a process is broken, they don't just see the error on a spreadsheet, they feel a sense of dissonance. It's like a musician hearing an out-of-tune note. It physically bothers them.
So that bad feeling they get about a risky investment, that's their EQ layer firing.
Yes. Their drive for safety is actually a drive for emotional harmony. Chaos feels bad to them. Neuter feels good. So when they decide to block a project, it's because the project feels dissonant or unsafe to their emotional core.
Wow, that makes so much sense. Finally, we have the manifestation layer. This is how they appear to the world. The report says, energy operates inward carrying, absorbing, integrating.
We call this the sponge effect. When a crisis hits, let's say a client is screaming or the market suddenly crashes, the WSWU doesn't scream back. They absorb the shock. They take that chaotic energy, pull it inside, and neutralize it.
That sounds incredibly draining.
Oh, it is. They are the shock absorbers of the car. They take the bumps so the passengers, you and me, don't spill our coffee. But that energy has to go somewhere, which we'll get to in just a minute.
Let's look at their deep traits. Section 9 of the report calls their mind a simulation machine.
This is arguably their greatest superpower. The quote is, before problems surface, the mind already simulates one round. They are living in the future. While you are planning step 1, They have already simulated the failure at step 3, the recovery at step 4, and the legal fallout at step 5.
That is the long focus perspective. They're playing chess while everyone else is playing checkers.
And this leads to a concept called defensive advancement.
Which sounds like a total oxymoron. Usually, defense means standing still.
Right, but for the WSWU, the only way to move forward is to secure the ground they're stepping on. They advance by locking things down, and crucially, they are forming Plan B and Plan C simultaneously. It's not just having one backup plan, it's a branching tree of contingencies.
So once they finally do act, their plan is basically bulletproof.
That's the payoff. The report calls it interference resistance. Because they have already accounted for every variable. Once they start moving, they are virtually unstoppable. They've already solved the problems you haven't even seen yet.
And there's always but this kind of mental processing has to come with a cost. Let's talk about the shadow blind spot. The report identifies this as excessive responsibility.
This is the real tragedy of the WSWU. Because they can see every risk, they feel responsible for every risk, they convert systemic oversight into a personal responsibility burden.
So if the company fails, even if it was totally out of their control, they feel like it's their fault because they saw the possibility.
Exactly. They think, I should have built a better wall.
Yeah.
And this leads to what we call the death loop.
Oh, that sounds ominous. The repetitive detail-checking death loop.
You've probably seen this in people. It's when they get stuck trying to achieve foolproof completeness. They check the data again and again, and then one more time. They are terrified of missing one tiny detail that could bring the whole thing down.
Analysis paralysis.
But specifically driven by a fear of catastrophe. And because they are inward carrying, they don't scream for help, they suffer from hidden tightness. To you, they look calm, maybe a bit slow. Inside, they are burning with high-pressure anxiety.
We really need to talk about how this impacts their social life. Section 11 describes their social role as a low-profile order protection umbrella.
It's a bit of a mouthful, but it's incredibly accurate.
Yeah.
They are an umbrella. They keep the rain off you. But let's be real here. Umbrellas aren't fun. You don't take an umbrella to a party to have a good time. You take it so you don't get wet.
So they aren't exactly the life of the party?
No. They don't use language to show off or tell jokes. They really only speak up to point out real risk. And this causes so much friction in relationships.
I can imagine. If I come to you all excited about a new business idea, and the first thing you say is, that won't work because of tax regulation 4B, I don't feel protected. I feel shot down.
Exactly. You feel the high standards and the boundary pressure. You feel like they're restricting you, but you completely overlook the deep protection intention behind it. They aren't trying to control you. They're trying to save you. They are the friend grabbing the back of your shirt so you don't walk into traffic. It's annoying in the moment, but it keeps you alive.
Let's pivot to business. If I'm a hiring manager, why do I need a quiet risk keeper? What is their specific business value?
Their ideal title is System Reinforcement Engineer. Their superpower is converting vague unease into clear protection logic.
Give me a concrete example of that.
Okay, imagine a boardroom. Everyone feels a bit weird about a potential merger, but no one wants to say anything. It's just a bad vibe. The WSWU takes that bad vibe and turns it into a protocol. They say, we feel uneasy because the liquidity ratios don't match. Here is a 3-step audit process to fix it. They turn feelings into safety facts.
That is incredibly valuable. They stop the organization from relying on luck or intuition.
Right. The report calls it institutionalizing lessons. They build safety into the process so you don't need a hero next time.
So if our listeners identify with this, or maybe they want to hire one, what are the recommended careers?
You want fields that require sustained stability and closed-loop logic. You do not want to put them in a chaotic sales role where they have to improvise every minute.
That sounds like a nightmare for them.
It would be. First, risk governance. Think compliance review, financial audit, places where finding the error is the win. Second, architecture design, system planning, cybersecurity, building the invisible walls that keep intruders out.
Makes total sense.
Third, quality control. High-precision QC, where close enough, is absolutely not acceptable. And finally, foundation support. Any core position that keeps the lights on.
They are the keepers of the foundation. They make sure the basement doesn't flood while we're having a party on the roof.
That is the perfect image for them.
We're coming to the end of our deep dive today, and I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. What is the one thing we need to take away about the WSWU?
I think the most profound insight from this report is the concept of the non-occurring accident. The quiet risk keeper's value is measured in things that didn't happen.
The lawsuit that wasn't filed, the server that didn't crash, the money that wasn't lost.
Exactly. It is very hard to appreciate something that doesn't exist. Few people notice who quietly blocked the worst-case scenarios, one by one. But if you have a functioning system, a safe home, or a stable business, I guarantee you there is a WSWU in the background absorbing the risk so you don't have to face it.
That is a powerful perspective shift. We usually applaud what people did. We rarely applaud what they prevented.
It changes how you see the boring friend, doesn't it?
Mhm.
They aren't boring. They are the reason you're safe.
So, to all the quiet risk keepers out there listening, we see you. We apologize for calling you buzzkills, and we thank you for all the disasters we didn't even know we avoided.
Well said.
Now, if this resonated with you, if you found yourself nodding along or realizing your spouse is definitely a WSWU, this deep dive was based on the Max Energy ME80 Personality Assessment Report.
It's a truly fascinating system. You can find out more by visiting the official website at www.maxenergylife.com.
Or you can search on Facebook for the official pages. You can look up Max Energy Edo or Met Energy Edo. It's definitely worth checking out.
It really is. Understanding your energy flow changes everything.
Thanks for guiding us through the safety checks today.
Always a pleasure to keep things stable.
That's it for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay safe, and maybe check your tire pressure on the way home. We'll see you next time.